the number one thing that when I talk to people who have, retired, accumulated a lot of wealth over time, I ask them, what is the single best thing that you did? They always say, I just made my savings automatic.
Well, welcome to the Steadyhand Coffee Break video series, where typically we focus on the retirement issues that our clients are facing, including challenges such as getting an income from your portfolio, managing cash flows from different sources, and minimizing tax liabilities. But today we're going to shift to the accumulation period. That's the time where we're working and growing our wealth and building our net worth. Now, to help us navigate all of this and teach us how to build wealth in our 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, I'm pleased to be joined by Dr. Preet Banerjee. Preet is a renowned expert in personal finance and behavioral finance and is the author of the popular book, Stop Overthinking Your Money. Preet's career has also included studying neuroscience, which no doubt shaped his perspective on personal finance, which he believes is 90% psychological and 8% math. We're thrilled to have you, Preet. Thank you very much for sharing your wealth of knowledge on the subject.
It's my pleasure, David. I'm always happy to give my time to my friends over at Steadyhand. As you know, I'm big fans of yours.
Well, let's get started with, indeed, your perspective on personal finance. In that TED Talk you did a number of years ago, you said it's 90% psychological and 8% math. Well, that doesn't add up to 100. So what is the 2% that we're missing?
It was perhaps my non-funny joke that the missing 2% is kind of underscoring how unimportant the math is. Because in my career, talking to people in the industry and just seeing things that I've noticed myself, it really comes down to the psychological components when it comes to dealing with money and to do well with money and the things that get us into trouble with money. It's really all psychology because, a lot of people know what they need to do. And one of the analogies that I give in my book is that it's like when you're trying to start a new fitness regimen, and you hire a personal trainer, oftentimes they give you really great results, but it's not like they show you a new way of doing a sit-up. They just make you do the sit-up that you knew you had to do, right? So it's a very sort of simplistic analogy, but it's the same sort of consideration when it comes to money. People kind of know what they should and shouldn't be doing. It's why we don't do those things that gets us into trouble.
You're starting to get into some of the sort of the advice and the 5 tips that you gave in that book about growing your wealth. So let's go through them one by one if we could. What's the number one thing that accumulators, people that are putting money aside for their long-term future, should be focused on?
Number one of those 5 rules, because I do think it's one of the most important, especially when you're in your accumulation phase, is disaster-proofing your life. And this is something that people really don't pay that much attention to because they're focused. When they start to get interested in personal finance, it is kind of centered around investing and retirement because that's the way it's sort of been positioned societally and in advertising. And about being good with money is about being in the markets and whatnot so that you can grow your money for down the road. Well, down the road and retirement is potentially 4 or 5 decades down the road. And a lot of things happen between now and then if you've talk to a human being, right? Life doesn't move in straight lines. And so disaster proofing your life is kind of like, crash testing your finances right now to see if things that are not abnormal that can happen to people like a job loss, unexpected big expense, something happening to your health or having an accident, how would that affect your financial situation? And there are ways to mitigate those risks. And I think one of the first things that I highlight in the book is the importance of disability insurance. And that is effectively, insuring the biggest asset that you have when you're younger. A lot of people might think it's, maybe it's your house or something like that or a car, but it's not. It's your future as of yet unearned income. When you're fresh out of school, you're in your 20s, someone today who's 20 is potentially going to make between $5 and $10 million over the rest of their life. That is a lot of money, assuming you are able to perform work to earn that income, right? So that is your single biggest asset when you are younger, your human capital, your ability to earn an income for the rest of your life. And one of the trends that we've seen societally is that there's been a downloading of risk from employers to employees when it comes to, disability insurance. So as you see more and more startups out there, their benefits package may not be as good as some of those big Fortune 500 companies that have been around for a long time. People used to work there their entire career, get a gold watch, gold-plated benefits, all that stuff. That's kind of going away. There's a shift now for people to take on more responsibility. We've seen the shift from defined benefit pension plans to defined contribution pension plans or no pension plans. So more people have to fend for themselves. And if you're self-employed, you probably don't have any benefits unless you manage them yourself. So disaster proofing your life, super critical when you're younger and you have your whole life ahead of you. It's a lot of potential. You want to make sure that you're in a position to take advantage of that potential.
Now, number 2 was spend less than you earn. And you kind of, you were going down that path a few minutes ago. Can you elaborate on that?
As you know, and anyone who's, pulled up one of those investment calculators to sort of see how much they can accumulate over time, time is one of your biggest allies when it comes to accumulating wealth over time. So the more you can put away means the less that you can spend today. But there is sort of a double effect there of saving money and saving semi-aggressively, because not only do you get used to living on a smaller amount because you have to put away something for the future, that means that how much you need to save for the future is actually a little bit less because you're used to spending less money as you're in the accumulation phase as well. So there's kind of like a double benefit of saving money for the future. But beyond that, it really is the compounding of your investments over time and starting young. So if you're a young accumulator, your savings rate is one of the most important things when it comes to accumulating wealth down the road. And, I encourage anyone who hasn't used those calculators to sort of see, because that's how I got inspired. I think it's how a lot of people get inspired to take action and start saving, is play with a calculator and see how much even $100 a month into a prudent portfolio at, call it a 6% long-term rate of return, see what the impact is of starting now versus starting 10 years later, play with those monthly amounts, and that can inspire you into action, which is one of the most important things, is actually doing something as opposed to just thinking about doing something.
Now, number 3 is to aggressively pay down any high interest debt. We've just gone through a period in the 2020 to 23 where interest rates were incredibly low. So why not take advantage of that?
When you are paying a low rate of interest and you're using, those borrowed funds to purchase something that increases in value over time, like buying a house or whatever, it's generally a good thing, right? You hope that the rate of return on that asset that you buy is greater than the interest that you pay on the loan. And so that's maybe sort of a productive use of debt. But where we see problems for people, and I'm a perfect example of this, I think this was also something that spurred me to take an interest in personal finance. No one ever taught me anything about money when I was in school. And I ended up with over $20,000 in credit card debt, and interest rates on credit cards are 20% plus. And so I just sat down one day, looked at my statement, saw how much I was paying in interest just to service the debt that I had accumulated to that point. And my debt load at that point wasn't going up and it wasn't going down. It was just sort of maintaining itself. So I just figured out, all right, so how much is this per year? It was thousands of dollars in interest. And I realized, wow, that means that just servicing this existing high interest debt is costing me a really great vacation once or twice a year. So that gave me the motivation to say, all right, I got to aggressively pay this down so that I can live a little bit more of my life. And it's incredibly liberating to get out from under that crushing weight of high interest debt. And we're talking like double digit interest rates. It is very crippling.
Your 4th point is read the fine print. What's that all about?
I'm surprised as to how many questions I get over time where people don't even understand the large print of some of the contracts that they sign, but it's the fine print that generally really catches people out. I remember there's an example of this young couple, relatively new to Canada, and they were telling me, they came to me in tears, and they said, we thought we were about to pay off our loan for our van, and it turns out we now have a $15,000 lump sum payment due at the end. It was a balloon payment, which was in the fine print. The person who sold them the car, got them the financing, probably didn't walk them through with a fine tooth comb about all the fine print, probably was trying to get a sale. They're maybe incentivized to act in their own best interest over their client. And that's something that was clearly spelled out, but it was in, sort of like the fine print. And when I hear stories like that and people not realizing what they've signed and put their signature to in terms of contracts, I just wanted to serve as a notice. You really should be reading contracts that you sign from front to back, and it will take time, but it's going to help with your financial literacy because you're going to find terms or things that you don't understand, and you're going to ask questions and learn more about them and learn about, the ins and outs of that deal.
Okay, fair enough. Now, your fifth idea, delay consumption, kind of fits in with the third one, which is spend less. The second one, spend less than you earn. How is this different from that?
Yeah, so there's sort of going a little bit deeper on this idea of delaying consumption and going into some of the factors that causes it. So one is this idea of keeping up with the Joneses, and especially as social media has now become way more prominent than it was when the book came out. We often hear the phrase, we are exposed to everyone's highlight reels, and we don't actually see what's happening behind the scenes. And it reminds me of a study which was actually, I believe, conducted looking at data in a Canadian city in Alberta. And it looked at the neighbors of people who had won the lottery. And what they found was the neighbors of people who won the lottery were more likely to go bankrupt. And part of the reason for that is when you see someone in the neighborhood with a new car, you think, oh, maybe I should be getting a new car, right? There's this temptation to always keep up with the Joneses. What you don't see is the hidden side of the balance sheet, which is how was that paid for? Was it just debt? You don't know if they won the lottery. Maybe they just are financing everything that they own and they're up to their eyeballs in debt and it's not manageable. So we compete with things that are visible, and people's debt loads and how they pay for things, it's not visible to us. So we don't get the whole story. So that's the keeping up with the Joneses phenomenon. There's also lifestyle inflation. So people are familiar with, CPI inflation, the general increase in the cost of goods and services. But lifestyle inflation is when the things that we want to buy tend to get more and more luxurious over time. And that tends to go up with our income almost in a straight line, and sometimes even faster than our income rises, because as our incomes get higher, we have access to more credit. And so that is a big problem that I see with, people who start out saving a healthy amount and then they get big income increases. Well, their expenses increase a lot as well. And so if you can resist that temptation to, sort of fall into this monthly payment trap and thinking in terms of monthly payments, this can go a long way. And again, this goes back to how we think short term. It's pretty often or common for people to walk into a car lot and, you pick your ideal car. And then a salesperson approaches you and says, how much are you looking to spend per month? Right? Never answer that question because whatever number they give you, they're going to make it work. Whether it takes 72 months, 84 months, 96 months, they'll keep extending the amortization of that car loan in order to make that work, right? Because we fall into this trap of thinking in terms of monthly payments. What fits right now? And then you just sort of end on this never-ending treadmill of loans and debt.
Great point. Well, just to close out on the book, which you wrote 10 years ago, Stop Overthinking Your Money, the 5 Simple Rules of Financial Success. Number 1, disaster-proof your life. Number 2, spend less than you earn. 3, aggressively pay down high-interest debt. 4, read the fine print, or in case today, read the large print as well. And 5, delay consumption. As we close out this discussion on accumulating your wealth, what if given the last 10 years, what has evolved in your thinking? What one takeaway would you want to give viewers as they think about maximizing success of accumulating wealth in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s?
The premise of the book was it's a very simple book. It's not designed to give you the equivalent of an A+ in managing every aspect of your financial life. It was designed to give you an easy A, right? So it's the 20% of things that you need to do to get you 80% of the results. And if you want to use that as a springboard to then, further yourself in terms of how well do you understand insurance, investing, or what have you, you can do that. That book was not designed. The book was designed to give you a solid base to work from that'll give you a lot of the results for the least amount of work, which is why it was framed as so simplistic. And I think that is my main message. And that is focus on the big, simple things that is going to drive success. And historically, I will tell you, the number one thing that when I talk to people who have, retired, accumulated a lot of wealth over time, I ask them, what is the single best thing that you did? They always say, I just made my savings automatic, right? The simple, pay yourself first from Dave Chilton's Wealthy Barber, the latte factor, all that stuff. They're all different versions of the same thing. Is that automating your savings and doing it as early as you can is by far the most powerful thing you can do when it comes to setting yourself up for the long term.
My colleague, Lori Norman, in closing our annual client meetings back in May, said the number one thing she wanted people to be doing in their accumulation years was to make sure that they were taking advantage of any company pension plans, especially where there were matching opportunities, because it is extraordinary how much money is being left on the table. So yeah, pay yourself first, but also take advantage of any matching company plans.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice.
Well, as we close out here, Preet, if people are interested in learning more about the work that you're doing, what's the best way to connect with you and follow you?
Two simple options. One, just go to my website, preetbanerjee.com. It'll have a link to my YouTube channel. And number two would be my YouTube channel. So if you just go on YouTube and search up Preet Banerjee, you'll find it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everybody for watching this video today. And be sure to leave any comments or questions that you might have on today's coffee break. We'd love to hear any tips that you have on building and growing your wealth. And again, I invite you to subscribe to the Steadyhand YouTube channel and ask to be notified when we load up new content. Preet, thank you again, and thank you all for watching, and bye for now.